Oh, it's just Jord.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Little Nightmares Theory video. Feels good to say that introduction again. I feel like I'm at home right now. How weird is that, right? The Maw. A place I want to live. I don't know how I would even get there, as no one knows what the Maw even is. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, in today's video, I want to explore this idea and share with you a theory I have, and see if we can finally locate the Maw's origins and its current location. I really want to rent a room there, I mean, just for one night though. I don't plan on being dinner anytime soon. Anyway, I digress. But before we get into this theory, I must warn you this video is going to contain a lot of spoilers. You have been warned. Anyway, so let's begin with the Maw's origin. And for this information we are going to use everything inside the Maw as evidence. So let's talk about the most obvious things to begin with, like the lady's kimono. So what is a kimono? And where does it come from? The kimono is a traditional Japanese garment. Kimono broken down is ki, which means wear, and mono, which means object. So, in a full sentence, it would mean the object that's worn. Kimonos are often worn on special occasions. They began to surface around the Edo period, which is 1615 to 1868. Something to note, the use of subdued colours and fabrics became increasingly common. This was part of a new aesthetic known as iki, or elegant chic, in which anyone with a real taste focused on subtle details. What's interesting is if we take this idea and the description and apply what we know to the lady's design, we actually find that the lady's design is quite subdued, so the lady's dress could be from an early Edo period. So now we've discussed a little bit about the kimono and the Edo period, let's see if we can actually match those things even more. And for this theory, we will exclude any of the use of black ships. Black ships is the name given to any and all Western vessels arriving in Japan in 16th and 19th centuries. So with the Edo period, for a long time, the Tokugawa, now forgive me for pronunciation, was the last feudal Japanese military government, which existed between the 1600s and the 1868. And as you can imagine, they had somewhat an army of ships. But why do I mention this? Well, I wanted to compare the build of the Maw to the ships of that current time to see if we can match the lady's kimono dates to the Maw, or the ships around that period. So with that being said, coming down to a lot of ship designs, it was very back and forth with my research, as I found many boats in the time period later on in the Edo period that actually used a few steamboat designs, and some that used traditional, obviously, wind designs. I figured if we tackled the steamboat issue first, then we might actually get more of a solid date, as we know that the Maw actually uses coal to keep the engines running, as we see on the Hideaway DLC. So this is the part of the theory where it gets really interesting, and I opened up an absolute can of worms on this Edo period thing. So, the majority of the Edo period, Japan was isolated. They wouldn't trade or anything, so we know that Japan used coal and many other sources of energy. What we also know is that the country was self-sufficient without the aid of any imports, but the era of the steamboat began in the late 1700s, and it was created by a man called James Watt. These times could collide and provide some decent evidence, as Japan after began to trade outside of their little bubble, so who's not to say that the Maw used elements from the traders? If we're looking at the general aesthetic design from the Edo period, the Maw would actually be a very good fit with the designs. But luckily for me and you, I have an actual more up-to-date example of this. So, for example, in 2017, a Tokyo Bay cruise ship created the ATAKENARU. Forgive me on pronunciations yet again, I'm not the best. Now, the ATAKENARU is modelled after the ships used by daimyo feudal lords who served the Tokugawa, and the design of the ship matches up really well to the Maw. Anything from the rice paper decorations, rice wallpaper, traditional wooden tables that they would eat their meals from. But with that being said, we can even show more evidence related to the time period. Let's take for example the kitchen level. In some parts of the kitchen level, we can see different types of stoves being used while the chefs cook. Interestingly, the stoves that we see both match our Edo period. Granted, the gas stoves could be imported from England and found its way onto the moor. As we know, the gas stove was first made in 1826 by a man called James Sharp from Northampton, England, so it still fits in that Edo period. But with that being said, the more interesting point I want to make is the more traditional stove that we see in the kitchen. These stoves are actually called kamado. Pronunciation, yet again, may be an issue. With the kamado, there would be a door or opening at the front where they would insert charcoal, wood, kindling, anything they could to make a fire, and then they would cook on the plate above the fire, which is what we can actually see in the game at the start of the kitchen level. With that being said, there are many more examples from this Edo period. We could list lots and lots of them. We could use so many for this theory, it would be unbelievable, but I do not want to drag this Edo period item list any longer than we need to, as we're quite far in the video anyway. But I want to see if you can spot any more objects that you think could fit in the current timeline, or the time period, the Edo period. I know for a fact there are many more, but that will be something fun for you guys and gals to spot on your next Little Nightmares playthrough, and if you do find any, let me know in the comments below. So, now with all the information being took in and all the aspects that we have seen so far, we can safely theorise that the game takes place in between the Edo period, which, to refresh your memory, is between 1603 and 1868. So that's around 250 years. Now, with this information, we can take a guess at where the moor is located in the sea. And ladies and gentlemen, I can confidently say I theorise that the moor is in the Pacific Ocean. Now, why do I say this? Well, I believe that the moor, when it wants to go into hiding or hide away for a year from anyone on land, I think they travel deep into the Pacific Ocean, where they can sustain themselves without the interruption of anyone else and keep out the way of traders' paths. Not to mention, when they don't eat people and children, this is a perfect location for the moor to find its next food source. This could explain the use of bluefin tuna on the moor, because as we know, the bluefin tuna is found in the Pacific Ocean alongside a majority of sharks and swordfish that we see in the moor's background too, but you have to really try look for them. And if you have the sharp eye, you'll notice that the moor actually has a fish net for catching them in the big bulks. You can see this fish net image in the concept art of the original game. But when all said is done, and they must acquire new passengers, I believe the moor proceeds to get closer to the Japan's coastlines, while not docking to keep themselves safe, and more likely because the way the moor is built, that they can't actually traditionally dock, is just too high and long. And this, I think, backs up the whole purpose of the ferryman, as the ferryman would be used to travel from the moor on his little boat to the seashores, and using a much larger boat to actually bring passengers onto the moor. But before we do conclude this theory, there is something that I wanted to mention. It was a little fact that I actually picked upon while researching this video. So in the Edo period, you could actually get away with absolutely any crime, so long as you were very rich. But why do I feel the need to bring this up? Well, I feel like it kind of could explain a lot of the little gaps in between the whole children just going missing randomly and children being abducted. There's so many of these children that are being took onto the moor and passengers that there would need to be some sort of bribery or something going on. But finding this fact out about the Edo period actually kind of reiterates that point, that might actually be a thing in the Little Nightmares universe, and that someone is utilizing this bribery system or their wealth to gain access to these kids or these passengers randomly. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is my theory video for today. Let me know what you guys and gals think. I mean, a lot of research went into this video, so I am hugely looking forward to your responses and what you think about this particular video. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got any ideas, any comments that you want to share with everyone, don't be afraid to drop them in the comments below. And remember to like this video if you enjoyed it and dislike it if you didn't. And remember to hit subscribe to be up to date with all the Little Nightmares theories that I release. There are more on the way, so don't be worried there. And there also are going to be more theory videos coming out about various other games, so make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to see them. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this theory video. I hope you have a brilliant morning, day, night, wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you all in the next theory video.